So I'd like to welcome everybody to our presentation today. This is day 2 of the Orange County Realtors Safety Week. Actually, it's day 3. I'm missing a day. I am Lori Namazi, your 2021 president of Orange County Realtors, and I am delighted to introduce our speaker for today. We have Sergeant Harry Drucker, who recently retired from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department after 33 years of service. More than 25 of those years was as a hostage and crisis negotiator. Sergeant Drucker has responded to over 400 barricaded suspect and hostage situations across over 4,000 square miles of LA County. He continues to respond to barricade callouts as a reserve deputy with the department. I've seen Harry present before, and you are in for a real treat. His presentation is incredible. We know you're going to have lots of questions, so if you do have questions, please be sure to put those in the Q&A, and we will address those after his presentation. So we are so happy to have you with us, Sergeant Drucker. Take it away.
Thanks for attending. So we're going to talk about de-escalating situations this afternoon, but I want to give you a little bit of my background, and it's not going to probably be what you would typically think of law enforcement, but it provides me with kind of a unique experience base and expertise to speak to the topic. But as Lori said, I spent 33 years with LA County Sheriff. I'm actually sitting in a sheriff facility now. I still respond to crisis situations as a reserve. I was just out last week on one in gosh, was it might have been Norwalk, can't remember right now. They all kind of blend in. There's 88 cities in Los Angeles County, so we're pretty big. I worked personally with your former sheriff, who recently passed away, and she was a wonderful person, and I have a lot of fond memories of working with her when she was with LA County. My last assignment with the department was in our training division, and I ran a studio. This is actually the studio here. I worked in a studio that made training films for LA County Sheriff. And also we did public service announcements, and those are kind of fun. My kind of marching orders to the group was for a public service announcement to be effective, you need to either make people laugh or scare the crap out of them. So we sometimes did both. But I want to show you just a couple examples so you can see kind of some of the stuff that we were putting out there. As you know, marijuana became legal for recreational use in California, not so recently, but not too long ago. And but driving under the influence of marijuana is still illegal. So I'm going to have you look at that PSA. It's a little short kind of notice for the public.
Interesting weather we're having.
So that was one of them. We also, right before COVID, we were going to partner with all the LA sports teams and do some kind of public safety message. We had a bunch of them kind of planned, and then of course COVID hit, so we weren't able to do it. We started with the Kings hockey team, and so we did this video on what to do when you are pulled over by the police.
Looks like a moving violation out there on the ice.
Yeah, I think Harvey forgot to signal before that last turn. As long as he stays calm, nothing to worry about, everyone in control.
Let's get back to the action. Harvey takes a deep breath, and he's keeping his hands visible right there on the wheel.
Yeah, sometimes people don't realize traffic stops can be stressful for officers too.
Harvey turns off the engine here, and it looks like the deputy is asking for his license and registration.
You do need both a license and registration to operate a motor vehicle. But if you're digging around for them before the officer asks, then it can look unpredictable.
I want to check that replay. I noticed Harvey was pointing at something. What's going on there?
Well, he's just letting the officer know where the license is. It's right there in his back pocket. Then he's asking to get it. That's fundamentally sound. That's a pro move.
Looks like Harvey's getting a citation. It's got a sting, and he's not too happy about it.
And no, he's not, but he's signing the ticket. That's the right move.
Yeah, by signing the ticket, Harvey isn't admitting he's guilty. He's just saying he'll show up in court. But you know, I'm not so sure he deserved a ticket out there today.
If you think the deputy made a bad call, you don't want to get into that out there on the ice and maybe wind up in the penalty box. Really solid performance, tough situation for any Zamboni driver.
Not to say that a lot of you driving Zambonis out there, but they played that before some of the hockey games, and we had a whole bunch of them planned out, and maybe the crew will go back to doing that. Some of the other stuff we did were internal training videos, which I'm actually going to pull the curtain aside and let you take a little look at a training video we did, just a portion of it. And this one, actually all businesses now have some type of policy where you shouldn't, you should be careful not to offend anyone or be discriminatory for a bunch of protected classes. And this is the tail end of one of those training videos we did. And I enlisted the help of my mother, who at the time was 93 years old, to ask her opinion about how do you not offend somebody?
Anything that refers to an individual's race, ethnicity, gender, age, or sexual orientation has the potential to offend. So a good rule of thumb might be that if you can say it to your mom, you can probably say it in the workplace. Isn't that right, Mom?
How the f should I know?
Depending on your mom.
Yeah, she she did it perfectly every time. I couldn't keep the straight face. That was my problem there. So why am I talking to you about this? I've got an expertise in my field, but what do I know about real estate? Well, way back when, in the early 80s or mid 80s, I don't know if Realty World still exists. They were out in Santa Clarita. Yes, I was, look at that guy. I was a realtor back in the 80s with my 80s hairstyle and that cheesy mustache. Would you sell your house through that guy? I wouldn't. And that's actually kind of, I got a close-up of that beautiful mug of mine. Look at the hairstyle. Kind of reminds you of, I don't know if we have any Eraserhead fans out there, but that's what was going on. So I have a little bit of experience, and I'm probably, real estate and my being horrible at it is probably why I became a law enforcement officer. So I have the field of real estate to thank for my career. I want to bring you into the mindset of intense and crisis situations. And we'll talk more about the actual negotiation in a little bit, but imagine that you have a listing and the house was kind of in bad shape. So you had the owners fix it up, put a fresh coat of paint on things, do some repairs, and it's ready to show. So it's Saturday night. The homeowner has left the house to allow for no interference for an open house on Sunday. And this is a home surveillance camera, and this happens. Anyone else wondering what the heck is going on? Well, I'll tell you. So your beautifully freshly painted house just got invaded by a guy who was, spoiler alert, on drugs, and decided that he couldn't breathe. So he was going to drive himself to the hospital, lost control of his car and crashed in front of your listing. He decides, instead of knocking on the door and saying, I need help, I can't breathe, I need paramedics, he decides to dive through the front window in his underwear. And he decides also that he can't breathe. So he's going to open his airway with a knife. Don't do drugs, folks. So this goes on for maybe 35, 40 minutes. So I'm going to spare you the whole video, but he bleeds over everything. I get called out as part of a suspect barricade to talk this guy out. And the homeowner sends us the video or access to this camera. So we're seeing some of this stuff live. Following up after this happened, the SWAT team shows up, rips the security gate off the front of the house. So they're able to make entry and deal with the situation. So if you can imagine, the homeowner actually was coming home they were about 2 hours out of town. They're like, I've got the keys. We'll give you the keys. You guys can go up. So if you can imagine, this is not a good situation. In fact, somebody came up to me at the command post. I was having trouble making contact with the guy, and very distraught woman. You have to get him out of there. Please get him out of the house. I want him out of the house. And I thought it was a family member of this poor guy, but in fact, it was the listing agent who says, if that guy dies in the house, I'm going to have to disclose that in part of the sale. It's probably going to drop the property value. So, but as far as negotiations, this is not negotiable, because by the time we got there, he had already lost consciousness, and sad to say, he passed away in the house. So just kind of a tie into real estate, not really something that you can de-escalate at that point. And we'll talk about that. So I have to tell you that it's very cool to say or be called that I'm a hostage negotiator. Very cool thing, but it's a fraction of what we do in police work. And as far as negotiations go, the movies would have you think that this is a full-time job for police. For most of us around the country, actually around the world, there are very few full-time crisis negotiators. There's some agencies that have them, but this is a on-call type of thing. I was on call in one form or another with the Sheriff's Department since 1995. And then when I started in 1996 as a negotiator, I've been on call and remain on call to this day. So it doesn't happen all the time. Out of the 400 plus incidents I've been to, only 4 or 5 of them have actually been true hostage situations. The bulk of what we do is suspect barricades. Somebody commits a crime and then refuses to come out. Maybe they're armed, so the police won't go in after them without special tactics or a SWAT team. Very few hostage situations. Now, it may be semantics, but if there is a person inside a location with a subject, doesn't make them a hostage. In fact, some of those situations are more dangerous than hostage situations, and we don't need to get into the weeds with that, but a hostage is how the subject views that person. Is that person just leverage or a tool to get them some other thing? If that person is let's say, and the person being held is a ex-wife or a former girlfriend, and I say that because it's usually the male who's the suspect, right? Then that's not, we don't really call that a hostage. They're a potential victim, and it ups the ante on how dangerous the situation is. So, a lot of what we're going to talk about, the subject of de-escalation, you probably heard a lot of that in the news, and a lot of kind of the anti-police sentiment about police should be trying to de-escalate. Well, something that the public needs to know is that The Sheriff's Department was one of the first agencies to do what they call a co-response model with the Department of Mental Health. And Sheriff's Department in LA has been doing it since the early 90s. And what they do is they take a clinician, a psychologist or a clinician from the Department of Mental Health, they partner them with a deputy sheriff, and they go out in the field. Part of the problem is that we don't have a crystal ball, and we can't tell, okay, this call, unless the caller says there's mental health involved. If it's the situation needs to be kind of de-escalated in and of itself, to the point where we can bring in the mental health worker or social worker to talk to that person. And pretty much what they do is they will get that person to some type of mental health care. It's a great model that's being duplicated around the world, actually. Italy is a country that's doing huge things with that. But LA has been doing it for a very long time. Within the past 5 years, they have created enough personnel in this unit to pretty much be out in the field 24/7, which is great, because when I was a patrol officer in the early 90s, before there was a 24/7 crew, if I had a person who needed to be committed for mental health reasons, I was done for the shift. I had to do the paperwork, with just limited training, do the paperwork, find a bed, a mental health bed for that person, and then transport them. And I wasn't able to respond to calls. Now, the clinician, the deputy sheriff, take possession. I hate to say that, take possession, but they make sure that person gets to some level of care, and it's a great way to go. So, and as far as training and de-escalation, police have always had it. It's just the problem is that some of these situations are so intense and so volatile, and there's weapons involved, that you can't approach somebody who's got a gun and say, what's going on with you today? Are you okay? You have to make sure that you're safe. And we'll talk about that a little as well. Let's see. I want to give you a little bit of background into the techniques that crisis negotiators use. Now I teach a basic class in negotiation, and it goes an entire week. So this is not something that you can do quickly, but I wanted to give you some of the concepts. Yes, that's the Brady staircase. And the reason I use that image is the FBI came up with something called the behavioral change stairway. And in general, the way to get to changing someone's behavior takes all of these steps. They're not necessarily in order, but most of the time they are. But this is how, and not just law enforcement, but in crisis, how you can take somebody from doing what they want to do and change their mind. And there is some applications in sales for this, and actually in our personal lives, but everything starts with active listening skills. Now, if most of you, I assume, are in sales, real estate sales, or you are support personnel, and I would hazard to say that most of you do a lot of these things already. I'm going to touch on a couple of those, the skill sets of active listening, but this is probably stuff you already do, and that's a great thing. I mean, it makes you successful in your work, and we're going to couple the active listening skill set with a couple of different things, and we'll talk about how you use that to de-escalate. And again, we'll get back into active listening skills a little bit. When you use those skills in the presence of empathy, that helps move things forward to let the person that you're talking to know that you're listening and that you care. Don't confuse empathy with sympathy. And this is a very common mistake that people make. Sympathy, in a very simple way, I'll say sympathy is feeling sorry for someone. Nobody wants to feel sorry for. And empathy is feeling for someone. So it's a subtle difference, but it means the world. Recently, there were a lot of reports or people were talking about these 13 servicemen and women who lost their lives in Afghanistan recently, and President Biden went to meet with them. A couple of these Gold Star families complained because even though President Biden is known for his empathy and a lot of the tragedies that he's had to endure personally in his life, that when they were talking about their child, their service member child, their patriot child who had given their life, President Biden seemed to talk about his son and his loss. And some people think, I think in general conversation, a lot of us, mostly men, have more of a difficulty with this than women. You're not really listening. You're waiting for your turn to talk. You're formulating, oh, I can't, when it's my turn, I'm going to say what I need to say. And a lot of people think that to be empathetic, you need to tell this person who's just experienced a loss or who is in crisis, you need to tell them about a time that you were in crisis or you experienced a loss. And it's really not how it works. As reported by the Gold Star families, kind of turned them off because they were like, this is not about you. This is about me. And we could do a whole several hours on empathy, but at its core level, you think of it this way. You need to be willing to sit in the darkness with them. They're experiencing a dark time, and there's no magic words that you can have. And if you think about a time when you've experienced a loss, a death in the family, something like that, you don't expect the people that you reach out to or that are around you to say something magical. That's never going to make you feel better. It's never going to make them feel better when the shoe's on the other foot. So and we'll talk about emotional labeling in a little bit, some of these things, but just being willing to be with them in that moment and experience that discomfort, because I don't know what to say in that moment, but just being willing to be there for them, it speaks volumes. It's a little odd to be speaking in these terms when you're talking about a bank robber or something like that. I'm going to play some clips a little later on, but we do it, and we'll kind of talk about how we do that. So if you do use your active listening skills in the presence of empathy, eventually you will start to build rapport with that person. Now, you guys are already great at this. This is kind of what you do when you start with a new client. This is actually where your return business comes from that rapport that you've built. So I'm not going to teach you anything new on building rapport, but trying to get on that same wavelength with that person, having a commonality. I mentioned when I did the segment last year about the book Influence by Robert Cialdini, which talks about persuasion. It's all about these type of things, how what different theories lead to building rapport and having influence on somebody, which is the next step. Once you build that rapport and you have all these other things, you will start to gain influence on that person. And when somebody's experiencing an immediate crisis and an intense situation, this is not a quick process. This doesn't go very quickly, and you need to spend some time on this. This is why the words that you select are important, but they're not the most important. We'll talk about what's the most important for that. So eventually, and I'm not sure on my screen, the panes where the faces are covering the right side of the screen. So it says behavior change on the far right. I'm not sure if that's how you guys are seeing it, but they don't always go in this order, but this is kind of the blueprint of what we do in crisis negotiation. Every single one of them starts with active listening skills, which we'll cover a little bit in a little bit of depth. You're going to get, I believe it's on Friday, you're going to get an entire segment on situational awareness. So I'm not going to cover very much of it, but you can't really do what we're going to talk about without having a little bit of this. So I'm going to mention a little bit of situational awareness as we go on. There is, let me see if, so, nothing that you do in, that's to speak of de-escalation or verbal skills, active listening skills. You're not even going to get there if your personal safety is not taken care of. Okay, so your main concern is your personal safety. You shouldn't be approaching people with weapons or people who are highly agitated without making sure that you are safe. I'm going to show you a clip of one of the public service videos that we did on active shooter situations. And it's actually part of the lexicon now, this run, hide, fight that was first originated by a company in Houston, an organization that did the first active shooter video. And remember, it's in that order for a reason: run, hide, fight. Run. If you are able to get out of a situation that is going to do you personal harm, do that. And you're going to get a lot more information on this on Friday from the other speaker. But I was actually looking, I always look for images for these presentations, and I typed in personal safety, and the topic of social distancing came up. This, I think, is from a cafe in Germany. This wasn't set up. This is an actual scene to assure that people are remaining 6 feet distance, 6 feet of distance. This is 2 meters there. And so just bottom line, make sure you're personally safe. We'll talk a little bit about situational awareness, but that's actually, again, you're going to get that in a full segment. I'm not sure if your presenter on Friday is going to mention this, but this is an excellent book called The Gift of Fear. And it speaks to our human beings and the fight flight response. And the bottom line, if I can encapsulate, I would highly recommend getting this book and taking a look. But the bottom line is you have the ability to sense, fear is given to us for a reason, and it's for survival. And so when something doesn't feel right to you, pay attention to that. I think in a lot of these public safety seminars and active shooter videos and things, we worry as trainers about giving people a sense of being paranoid. You need to find a balance of living your life as intended and as you want to. Be aware of what's going on around you. Be vigilant, but don't be scared or paranoid. But as far as fear, it's something that was kind of given to us as human beings to pay attention to and look around a little bit more. I'm going to play a clip from our active shooter video that's available on YouTube, and actually give you a resource for some other safety videos that you can use. But it's amazing how many times, and you'll hear this on the news, but we in police work hear it as well, that there is gunfire. And unless you shoot guns a lot or around firearms, the sound is not what the movies kind of lead you to believe. It's not this enormous boom. It's more of a popping sound. And you will hear people say, when there is a shooting, I thought there were fireworks going on. I thought it was a car backfire. And it amazes me how many times that we hear that. One of the scenes in this active shooter video takes place in a mall, and all of the actors that we used were anticipating when the gunfire was going to start, and they immediately ran. And we reshot the scene and told them, okay, give it a second, understand that people out in the world will go, what is that? Not expecting it to happen. And then it'll take them a while to react. So bottom line on this for me, and again, you'll get more of it on Friday, is just be aware of your surroundings. And, when I was a new police officer on the street, sheriff's department, we started in the jail. But once I hit the street, the first couple of weeks, my neck hurt. And that's because my training officer taught me you constantly need to be looking all around your situation. And I still do it to this day. My wife and I'll be driving down the street. Oh, did you see that? And she'll say, no, what? My kids never notice because they're like this in the back seat with their phones. But be aware of what's around you. Again, not to be paranoid, but just to be aware if there's something that you need to respond to. So this is just I'm not going to play the whole thing. The video is available on YouTube. It's Surviving an Active Shooter. And there's tons of them on YouTube. So Surviving an Active Shooter, LA County Sheriff. And it's got a graphic that says, what would you do? And here's just the beginning couple scenes of it. And I'll come back to that website as well.
morning that began like any other turned tragic today when an employee opened fire on his supervisor and fellow coworkers.
Students, parents, teachers are asking why today after a bloody rampage plunged this campus into tragedy.
Details are just coming in, but we're being told that a heavily armed gunman opened fire this evening at the mall food court behind me. There's no official word on any casualties yet, but one eyewitness reported seeing at least 6 people shot.
Active shooter. A gunman or gunmen killing or attempting to kill people in a confined, populated area.
You gotta get some sleep. You're looking like a vampire.
You sleep. You ain't got no babies at home keeping you up.
What the hell? Ah, Sim again.
We've tried. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to let you go.
Active shooter killings are a tragic, unpredictable reality, and one that's becoming more common.
Since 2006, the U.S. has averaged an active shooter event with 4 or more deaths every 2.9 months.
Even though the number of active shooter events has been increasing, your odds of being involved in one are still very slim. But just like fire drills and earthquake preparedness, making a plan in advance can make all the difference. If you do find yourself in the middle of a senseless attack, the why doesn't matter.
Hey. Hey, buddy.
Hang on, something's happening.
What matters is surviving.
On average, 20 mass shootings take place in the U.S. every year.
Killers usually choose their victims at random. They look for easy targets. So the harder you are to see or to hit, the safer you are. When an attack starts, if you can find a way out of the location, do so.
Get out.
So that's just the beginning part of it. Again, it's about a 9-minute video, and the crew here at the Sheriff's Department actually won an independent programming local Emmy for it. So it may be blocked off for you on there. Surviving an Active Shooter, LA County Sheriff. That's the name of the video. The website at the top, lasdvideos.org, has a public-facing segment that's got some videos, and you're more than welcome to use them for your training and forward them around. When the video was made, we wanted it to help as many people as possible, so there's no charge for using it organizationally. And if it helps one person in an incident, that's what it was meant for. So I'm gonna have to skip over that. Okay, so intense situations, where do they come from? What causes them? And that's probably the $1 trillion question, because when you are kind of thrust into an area or in a situation where something is occurring, you don't know all the bits and pieces that kind of fell into place or fell out of place to create this situation. And you're kind of, hopefully you're not walking in completely unaware, but generally these are not planned incidents. So we don't know the underlying cause of things. But an interesting thing is, part of de-escalation, when you're dealing with an individual who is in crisis or who is experiencing very high emotion, part of dealing with that is finding out what it is that got them to that point. Generally, when I'm called for a crisis negotiation, I get a little bit of information about what has happened. The one that I just went on last week, a kind of mentally ill individual had barricaded himself in his aunt's house, was destroying things, and had a crossbow of all implements, and was shooting it out of the window. So, obviously a very dangerous situation. Crossbows can do a lot of damage. And we were wondering where the heck did he get the crossbow? Truth is stranger than fiction. The aunt was a teacher at a school, and one of the things she taught was I don't know what you call marksmanship with crossbows, but like archery and crossbows, and so interesting thing. And it amazes me also how somebody who has some type of weapon in the house, when they've got a family member who has mental illness, giving them access to it. I don't understand that, but so when we respond, we as police respond to a situation, we have a lot of background on what's going on, and it helps us how to deal with it. And this leads to your situation. When you are going to a home, a piece of real estate, try to find out as much as you can. And you do this usually when you're getting the listing about what the family situation is, what they're looking for, why are they selling. This is stuff that you already should have, and it can help in a number of reasons. I remember way back in the 80s, when I went through school for real estate, they talked about how stressful real estate transactions are for a family. And I think they said the only two higher stress situations are death of a spouse, and there was something else, I can't remember, but it's pretty up there as far as intensity and stress with the situation. And when it comes to the point where the police are involved, it's generally, we all have as human beings the ability to handle a pretty good amount of stress. And when you've got a major life event or a job loss or a pandemic that happens, we can generally handle those things pretty well. It's the multiples that happen. When multiple stressors happen at the same time, maybe there's a divorce going on and there's a financial issue and they have to sell the house. Going back maybe 10 years ago, my wife got laid off from her job, and we live in Sherman Oaks, had to put the house on the market. And it was a very stressful situation. If one other thing had happened, if we had a major health situation, or my mother had passed away or something like that, it would have added more stress perhaps than I can handle. And those are the ones where somebody starts to act very unpredictably, and where police become involved. So as much, to the extent that you can, do your research about the location, do your research about the people involved and what type of situations that they're going on. Now, some questions you cannot ask, and things about, health and mental health issues. But in your conversation and your building rapport that you do with people, I'd be willing to bet that you have a pretty good way of getting a lot of this information without asking those things. And then when you're going through the homes, pay attention, look around, see what you see. Firearms are pretty well, they're commonplace everywhere, but let's say enthusiasm for firearms aren't in California what they are in some other states. I just got back from Colorado, teaching law enforcement there, and it's an open carry state. So you walk into a Subway restaurant to get a sandwich, and there's somebody with a gun on their hip. It's not uncommon, especially in rural areas, to see people who've got like a shotgun just leaning up against the wall because maybe they've got wolves that come in for the livestock. But in our urban areas, it's a little less prominent. And so as you're walking through the houses, notice everything. I know your focus is going to be on maybe the floor plan and what things are looking like, but pay attention to what's going on, and think, just, is there a potential for an intense situation or crisis to happen that you might unwittingly be involved with? So pay attention is kind of the message here. And as you are talking to an individual, pay attention as well. This speaks to situational awareness as well, but more about people awareness. So people who are avoid eye contact, somebody who is clenching their fists, down by, they're pacing, they're moving back and forth. Now, if you already know this person and this behavior is unusual, and you can kind of tell the longer you're around something, when something they do is just not like them, notice those things. They may mean nothing. They may mean nothing, but they could mean that something has gone wrong and this person may be in crisis. And I think if you have a little bit of that rapport, it's okay to ask them, hey, are you okay? You look, you don't look well, or, whatever. You don't want to insult them, but that is actually a way to step into that empathy and active listening. I'll talk about the different active listening skills, but to even start the groundwork for de-escalation, noticing these things. When I train police officers, one thing, their physical safety is very important. What's in the hands, or what the hands have access to, or what's going to be dangerous. And again, don't be paranoid. A lot of highly violent situations are rare, but when you're dealing with people who are experiencing a stressful event, like selling their house, you never know what can happen. So be prepared and pay attention to what's going on. One thing, I'd already mentioned about the gunfire and what it sounds like. So let's talk about de-escalation and really what it is, and what are different methods to actually make it happen. Again, it is not like, I do have the image here of a car brake, but it's not like slamming on the brakes. It does take some time, and it is, there is a skill set that we'll talk about how to get that. But if done correctly, you've got a person who is experiencing high emotion, and one of the active listening skills, emotional labeling, speaks directly to validating the emotion that they have. We'll get into that a little more in depth in a minute, but this person is experiencing probably a lot of frustration and usually anger. And the way to bring that down a little bit, there's a couple of different ways to do that, but one of them is to validate that emotion is there, and that it is okay for them to have that. One thing I'll say is that's very difficult for most of us, is to allow them to vent. Once they get the understanding that you are willing to listen, that's actually, the listening is the third one there. We mentioned empathy already, but once they get the idea that you're willing to listen, then they may just everything might come out, and they might vent about everything that is wrong. And the important thing is, do not interrupt them. Let them vent. What you might want to do, there's an active listening skill called minimal encouragers, and that's just those little, those little one syllable kind of things to let them know you're not interrupting them, but you're listening. If you're in person with them, it's a little different. When you're on the phone with somebody, if you've ever been on a conversation with somebody and you're listening, but you're not saying anything, and they go, "Are you listening?" Kind of what they're looking for is this little minimal encouragers. It could be a couple words, "Wow, tell me more," things like that. I use "wow" a lot, just because, especially if it's a highly emotional situation, it's me kind of saying, "Wow, this is really intense for you." So listen, very, very important. So we'll kind of go in depth into these as we go through. So our active listening skills, there's actually 8 definable skills. There's probably more, and you guys probably already do this. It's probably something that you already do, and we might be putting a name to something you already do. I'm not going to go into all of them, but in law enforcement and a lot of business, we love our acronyms, right? So the acronyms for the 8 skills is MORE PIES. And I'll tell you what all those 8 skills are, and then I'm only going to cover a couple of them in depth that speak directly to de-escalation. But here's our 8 skills. Minimal encouragers, I just mentioned that. The ones we're going to go a little more in depth into is open-ended questions and emotional labeling. So I'll cover those later. Reflecting and mirroring, very briefly, somebody says something, you just reflect it back to them. Like, he left without giving me a call. And you're like, he didn't give you a call? putting that little kind of question intonement on the end of it, it lets them know, I heard what you just said, and I'm reacting to it, but you just reflect their words right back. Paraphrasing is very similar, but you just change into your own words what they said. iMessages is something, it's a little hard to explain, but it's bringing your own experience into it and your own emotion. If somebody is pacing and yelling very loudly, what you could say is something like, it's very important what it's very important to me what you have to say, but I get kind of scared when you're yelling, would you please not talk so loudly? You're telling them that what they're doing is affecting you without blaming them. With saying like, stop yelling at me. You're saying, I'm reacting in a certain way to what you're doing, and then asking them to not do that. It's very rarely used in crisis negotiation, although I have used it. Effective pauses is exactly that. It's and again, women make very good crisis negotiators. Men make good ones, but less so because of probably this effective pause thing. Men have this kind of, I got my piece to say, and I've got to say it, and they aren't really listening. So sometimes maybe just let the silence lie, especially if somebody is going through that venting phase and they pause for a breath, or they pause for a minute. It's okay just to let that silence lie. It's a little uncomfortable for a lot of us to deal with that silence, but it is an active listening skill. Summarizing is just kind of bringing everything together about, wow, let me get this straight. This happened and this happened, this happened. Now you're really mad about that. That summarizes everything that's kind of gone on. So we'll talk about all those in a minute. So this is a great video. Some of you may have seen it, but it speaks to a lot of male-female differences, but also about the ability to just listen.
It's just, there's all this pressure, and sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't.
Hey, Lori, I see the little number popped up in Q&A, so just please jump on if I need to address anything in the moment. In that video, the guy said, that sounds really hard. We're going to come back to that, so remember that. So this is actually, it's not one of the individual skills, but this is kind of should be overlying everything, and what can really get your foot in the door as far as de-escalation, and that is the tone that you use and the tempo that you use in speaking to somebody. What we say in negotiation is low and slow. If somebody is yelling at you and speaking extremely fast, try to keep your tone low, speak slower than they are, and eventually, human nature, actually, they will eventually come down to you. Now, sometimes I've heard tapes, there was a tape I heard of an ATF raid on a house in South Dakota, and it took 45 minutes for the person to finish venting and come down. So it's not necessarily going to be quick. And don't think if you maintain a low tone and slow speech pattern that if they don't immediately come down, that it's not working. Eventually it will come down. So tone of voice is extremely important, more so than your choice of words. I was working what we call a jumper call, which I think is kind of funny because, well, it's not funny. Cops have an odd sense of humor. So we call them jumpers if somebody is contemplating jumping off a building. And this individual was on the 4th story of the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood. He had a rope tied around his neck and was threatening to jump. And our negotiator had beautiful tone. I'm going to play a tape from another negotiator, another female negotiator, who has a very similar tone to Maria, who's the one with the guy at Pacific Design Center. And she actually said the words, "I realize you think that you're at the end of your rope." And those of us who were there like cringed and like turned away. It didn't matter to the guy because her tone was beautiful. So consider that. Sometimes I don't, if you're like me, you've heard recordings of yourself and you're like, I don't like how I sound. Be a little self-aware of what your tone is. And if you question that, ask somebody close to you, how is my tone? And then just be cognizant of that and change it as you go along. So one of the other skill sets of active listening skills, emotional labeling. This is one of my favorite, and it is the most powerful active listening skill when it comes to de-escalation. And so we'll talk about that, kind of dial it down. So what is emotional labeling? It's pretty much what it sounds like. And so you take in, what are you hearing from this person in the way of emotion? A lot of times, if we're in an intense situation, most of the time it is a loud emotion. It is anger, could be frustration. And so just listen to them and try to think of, okay, what emotion are they going through? And we'll talk about whether you don't have to necessarily nail it. There's actually, and I can provide this, or you guys can to run this on the internet to find this. It's called an emotional color wheel. And it's a reference that we use with negotiators on, what are we hearing from this person and trying to nail it down. And back to the woman with the nail in her head. And when the guy said, "That sounds hard," that is actually an emotion label. This sounds like it's very hard for you. He's not saying really what emotion, but it's tied in. And then what did she say? "Yes, it is." Human beings want that kind of caring knowledge that a person not feels sorry for them, but they understand what they're going through. So what emotion are you hearing? And just label it. And it's super simple. It's as easy as just saying, "Wow, you sound really angry." And the person might say, "You're damn right, I'm angry," and then vent a little bit more. Venting is really good. Let them do that. As long as it's verbal only and doesn't get into any physical, it's great because they will eventually come down. So, "Wow, you sound really angry." Or another great way to do it is, "Wow, that's a lot to take in. I would be angry if that was happening to me." So you're labeling what they're going through. Is it, I guess I forgot to have, pull that down. Let me see if that's, okay. So it gives validation to the emotion that they're feeling. And I can tell you from just a recent incident with my wife where I was angry at something, I said something and her response was something like, "That's nothing to be angry about." It invalidated my emotion. But you want to give them that validation that emotion that they're feeling is okay. So while you sound really angry, and the last bullet on this slide was what if you're wrong? So if you look at these and in the angry category on the right side, it goes let down, humiliated, so, and then it gets down to frustration. If you say you sound really angry, and they go, "Oh, I'm just frustrated," what they're telling you in that statement is it doesn't really rise to the level of my definition of anger. Maybe they don't like to be thought of as an angry person. So, but it's fine. In my experience in dealing with criminals in crisis and other people on the edge of buildings and things like that. It's not important to nail the emotion, have the exact one. And you can see that on the left side is happy. Yes, we actually deal with people who are either substance abuse or some other issues where they're happy, they're excited. And it's actually what you want to do, and the earmark of de-escalation working is you move from these loud emotions either to the quieter ones or from the negative, the angry, to the happy. And you guys have a lot of experience in building rapport, which is kind of the next thing we're going to get to, and building rapport. And you can, if this is a person who you've already dealt with, some of these things. There's something in crisis negotiation called hooks and triggers. And what we look for is we're searching for what is that thing when we talk to them about that is going to either bring them down to de-escalate their mood or to get them to eventually that behavior change, right? That get them to come out of the building without any type of violence. And so we look for those hooks. Similarly, we look for the things that trigger that anger to come back. And so if you mention, there's an old, and I'm not sure the age group of our audience here, but there's an old vaudeville routine of Niagara Falls. The one guy mentions Niagara Falls, and that was the thing that sets the guy off. So you don't want to mention that trigger, that Niagara Falls phrase or that topic that will get them to fly off the handle. It's probably easy to assume that if there's a divorce involved, probably don't want to talk about the ex-husband or the ex-wife. Because that's probably a trigger. You never know. I mean, it may help them to vent about that person, but for the most part, for our purposes in hostage and crisis negotiation, we are looking to play up on the hook side of things, the things that are going to get them. And I'm going to play a clip on a kidnapped suspect in a little bit about this concept of having that hook. But as part of your building rapport process, you may know some of these things that they already have. Kids are usually an easy one, not always, but kids are usually the thing that people are most proud of their kids. They like talking about their kids. If they're contemplating even suicide, that mentioning that hook of their children will possibly bring them down to change their frame of mind in the moment. So that's generally a good thing. Now, if there's a divorce and a custody situation going on, that could be a red flag. So, that's why doing your research is very important, to know those things. So, think about that. If you strike on something where the person you're talking to is excited to talk about something, or even, if you probably have more of the ability to deal with somebody face to face and look at their facial expressions. You can see when somebody talks about, I'm proud of all my kids, but my son lately is 15 and he's a JV football player at Notre Dame High in the Valley. And I'm extraordinarily proud of his progress, of how far he's come. Because a couple of years ago, he was the kid sitting in his room playing video games nonstop, rarely came out of his room. It was almost like a prison. You'd open up the little flap and stick his food in. But he's really come out of the room and is really involved in football. So I talk about that and I get an expression, I'm probably doing it now, expression on my face. And so you want to find out what those things are and try to talk about those. And usually when you find that hook, you're going to get them to stop that intense negative emotion because they can't maintain that where you're going. So this building rapport, finding that commonality, kind of making friends with the person and can help and do wonders for that. They're more likely to agree to de-escalate when you have that rapport. So let me see okay. So this, I want you to listen to this. Again, it's very difficult to play a clip from an actual situation where you will hear de-escalation happen in real time because it takes a long time. So I'm going to give you the backstory and then tell you, we're almost at the surrender phase in this incident. So this is a bank robbery that happened in 2002 in Alhambra. And this guy went into the bank at very early in the day, wanted $50,000, and one of the tellers hit the silent alarm. It turns into, this was one of the few actual hostage situations I was handling. I was the team leader on this. So, one of the things in our structure of negotiation, police negotiations, it's not like the movies where you've got one person, Kevin Spacey before he was canceled, Kevin Spacey coming in and like, I'm the negotiator. There's a whole team involved. We talked about do your research. We've got a team member to do that. We've got a person on the phone. We've got a person coaching them. And in this incident, I was the team leader. And throughout the day, this guy has released some of the hostages. Some of them actually escaped with the help of the SWAT team. But this guy was pretty, not your typical criminal, but he was threatening to blow up the bank, which is interesting because he didn't have any explosives. And he had made some threats, as you can imagine. But we got to the point where there's no longer hostages in the bank. This is a clip of our negotiator, just amazing negotiator that I've worked with for over 20 years. Anna Breeze is her name, and she was a mental health clinician. I've actually got 2 clips of her to play, but in the bank robbery, you're getting to the point where now it's time to finally talk the guy out. We don't want to insert the SWAT team in because this individual has a firearm. So this is her trying to talk him into into surrendering. And if you listen to, pay attention to the tone of voice, and just from, I need to find a good example from the beginning, but the transition of him being this kind of ominous character, you can almost hear him smiling in the interaction. So this is kind of an example of rapport well built, and she's trying to get him to finally step out of the bank.
Okay, just 10 more minutes. Listen, Danny, if I say 10 more minutes, this is it though. Okay, that's it. Hey, everything I promised you, I do it, right? Yeah, you did. Since before, until now. But like I told you, the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Okay? I was about to go out, but the helicopter just, I know you told me all those things. Right? Yeah. But in 10 minutes, this whole thing could be over. Yeah, but just the helicopter thing. Listen, how about 5 minutes? Hey. 5 minutes? Come on, you're a very good negotiator. Hey, that's exactly right. You gotta let me try and negotiate this. Okay. How about 5 minutes? 10. That's 5 minutes. 10. That's it. 5 minutes. 10. 10. I'll be out. Okay, Danny. Thank you. And then you come out. That's it. Thank you. Stay on the phone though with me. Okay? You sound better. You feeling better? Just a little bit. Okay.
So if you listen to that clip, you can almost hear him smiling. And this is a bank robber. This is a guy who held 9 people hostage. Mr. Bad Guy. And all of a sudden they're kind of bantering back and forth. Her tone is just remarkable. This is, kind of that when I talked about tone and tempo. And you play off the person once they've kind of de-escalated, and you're able to, you'll feel your way. There is using a sense of humor is completely on board, even in my line of work, if it's in context. But that's just a beautiful example of getting from a very intense situation and how it de-escalated. So so this next clip, I have to give you a little backstory. This is a kidnapping case. This guy was he committed a kidnapping in Ventura County. For a kidnapping in California law to occur, you have to take somebody from, like, I could take somebody here on one side of me to the other side against their will. That's a kidnapping. And that's kind of what happened in this case. This guy tried to get a woman at gunpoint. out of her house. There's a whole kind of backstory for that. He gets her to the driveway. She runs back in the house. The kidnapping's complete. The guy goes, well, that was kind of stupid. He gets in his car. He engages in a police pursuit from Ventura County to Los Angeles County to San Bernardino County, back into Los Angeles County, where the CHP does what they call pit maneuver. That's when they kind of ram the car. And so he's in his in the family van, excuse me, on the freeway, surrounded by SWAT team. You'll notice the first thing you hear in this clip is the negotiator, same negotiator, and the subject laughs because they've already got a strong rapport. And what she's trying to do is de-escalate further using the concept I spoke about a little while ago, finding a hook. And this guy is telling her he wants to kill himself. He wants to commit suicide, or excuse me, they've changed something in my line of work. It's complete suicide. Committing is what you do to a crime. Completing suicide is what somebody who is intent on taking their own life does. She's talking to him about how his family would react and trying to find out, okay, are the kids, as I said, they most of the time are the kids a hook? And I want you to listen to how she does that, because you'll notice he's going to say, she's going to mention the kids and he's going to say, I don't want to talk about it. And she'll use an active listening skill reflection. She'll go, you don't want to talk about it? And then see how much she does end up talking about it. And oh, this video is we've got a phone in the car that has a camera on it. So it's very low quality, but it's actually a phone case that's sitting in his lap and he's talking on the phone.
Did you drive out?
In this van? Yeah, it was in good shape till the sheriff's department got through with it.
Those spike strips? That was CHP, not us.
I hope they pay for it, because I really would hope that burden is not put on my family.
Okay.
Paying for a vehicle that I didn't destroy.
Yeah.
They went a little hog wild on it. The fuel would have run out eventually.
Yeah. She had those guns. That's everyone's concern, Mike. Are those guns. So how many children do you have? You've mentioned it a few times, but
I don't want to talk about it.
you don't want to talk about it? How do you think they feel knowing that you intend on killing yourself today? Because they're going to find out. Can I, as a mother, just tell you I have children, and this would be so devastating to any family, especially children, though.
This is the lesser of two evils.
How do you figure?
Well, here we have two bad situations.
Bad situation that you can still make right. It's not too late to do that, Mike.
Come on, you can't make this right.
Yes, you can.
I can't walk out of this right.
Why can't you? Who have you hurt? Who have you hurt, really?
I still hurt my family by
okay, and
living.
You don't think that by killing yourself it's going to hurt them? I already told you.
Oh, that'll hurt just probably the same amount, but I will be out of the picture, which would not be bad.
But you know what? You wouldn't be out of the picture because all they would think about is how you killed yourself. And that will haunt them, and I told you it's going to fuck them up forever. They're going to remember it all the time. It's not anything that's going to get better. It's not. And that's not coming from my law enforcement side. That's coming from the mental health clinician that I still am.
I don't know if I mentioned that before. Anna, she's now a sergeant with the Sheriff's Department. She was a mental health clinician in that co-response model. So just beautiful, beautiful tone of voice. And actually the clip goes on and she mentions the children several more times. This is an obvious hook and something that is caused him to think very much about whether or not to kill himself that day. He kind of tried to do a little bit of a suicide by cop. He came out of the car with the gun, and SWAT team did have to shoot him once, but he survived that incident. So when you find something that's a definite hook, you want to use that to your advantage. So now you've got the crisis at hand that you're dealing with. The bank robbery was, the bank robber, this guy, the kidnapping. We try to talk about, and if you notice in that conversation, they're talking about other things. and the manner of their conversation is not, although she does talk about in the bank the goal of having him come out. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And for us, for you and for your goal in de-escalation is to kind of bring things down to a more rational, just a more rational period. There's something that, and I mentioned it takes time. There's something called the rationality, emotionality balance. Generally, when there's a crisis or an intense situation, emotion is very high and rationality is low. And over the course of time, things will balance out, but you have to give it that time and kind of, consider the de-escalation skills as a little bit of a push to accelerate the time frame. Eventually people are going to come down from that highly emotional state. And we'll recap things in a little bit. We got a few more minutes, but what about this, the squirrel, right? The ability to talk about things that are not the crisis at hand or not the thing at hand. If you're dealing with somebody in a transaction, you have, maybe there's something that's kind of just beneath the surface that's really causing, that's where the crisis is coming from. So kind of testing the waters and asking, one of the other things, active listening skill is this, I'm going to go back to that clip in a minute. Open-ended questions. The answer to that question on the screen, if it's blocked for you, is this an open-ended question? And it is not. And anything that has a yes or no answer is not an open-ended question. Open-ended questions are kind of the why, hey, what happened today? Why are you so angry? That opens it up. And if they will talk to you, maybe you can find out what's, lying just underneath the surface. And a lot of times those discussions are this type of thing. It's nothing to do with what's going on right in the moment. I'm going to play a clip. This next one, running short on time, so I'm going to try and finish things up. But this is a robbery suspect who broke into or robbed a Rite Aid drugstore for OxyContin. He then barricaded in a cell phone store. Luckily, everybody got out, so it was just him in there. And at the point I'm going to pick up this conversation is he's contemplating coming out, and I'm talking him through the SWAT team wants him to take his shirt off so they can see he doesn't have the weapon in his hand, because the guy definitely had, at one point he had a handgun taped to his hand so he wouldn't drop it. I convinced him to take the tape off, and now we're at the point where they want him to take his shirt off, but for some reason this guy, he was going to take his shoes off too. They wanted him to lie down in the store, and then they were going to go take him into custody. So he mentions about a shoe, but you'll see he's going to change the topic. And one of the things in de-escalation, if somebody changes the topic, go with the flow. He's going to mention football to me, which has zero to do with this incident. And let's take a listen. Oh, let me go back.
You okay, Sean?
Yeah, it's just kind of hitting home right now.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of unlacing my other shoe, though.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you taking some deep breaths there. It does help to get some, to get some oxygen flowing, and I'll talk you through it. We'll be good.
Okay. Do you have a favorite football team?
I'm a little embarrassed to admit I am not a sports fan very much. So right. Not into football much.
I'm a huge football fan.
Yeah?
Yeah, Washington Redskins, so you can see my trail of tears.
Okay, so I'll start watching the Redskins if.
Oh, you don't want to do that. You might end up killing yourself.
Wow. Wow, that bad, huh?
I love them, but they're heartbreakers.
Got it. Understood.
So I don't know if I mentioned this guy was telling me he wanted to commit suicide, complete suicide, the whole time. So that's why that line made me laugh. And we had rapport, so we were able to joke like that. But So kind of let the person you're talking to lead the way a little bit. And if they start talking about something off topic, don't feel the need to immediately bring them back into whatever the problem is at hand. They want to feel comfortable with you. If you've got rapport, that comfort may already be there, and you can bring them down by doing those things. So one of the things, I'm just going to kind of wrap things up, and then we'll take questions. As far as kind of to wrap all the de-escalation techniques together, remember tone of voice. First of all, personal safety is very, very important. That's foremost. Use your tone of voice, low and slow. Will hopefully bring them down. Have empathy for them, not sympathy, but empathy. Again, be willing to sit in the darkness with them a little bit. Emotional labeling is huge, and ask those open-ended questions. But I hope that you found value in a little of this. If you're interested in the topic of crisis negotiation, I'm just going to put up a few. I did some podcasts not too long ago. There's one called the Dad's Doomsday Guide. This is on podcast platforms and also on YouTube, but the YouTube version, it's just audio only. So Dad's Doomsday Guide, hostage situations. We also talk a little bit about hostage survival. If you're ever taken hostage, what you can do to keep yourself safe. Same podcast, Dad's Doomsday Guide, did one on the active shooter issue that we talked about. This next one was a really fun one, Topher Grace's Minor Adventures. I came on and taught Topher Grace and Thomas Middleditch, who's another great improv actor, how to be a hostage negotiator. And it kind of went off the rails. If you know those two, you know it was a little bit of comedy in there. So thank you for your time. And Lori, we'll turn it over to you if there's questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sergeant Drucker. As I promised, this was a fascinating conversation. We learned so many tips for our personal life as well as our business. So thank you for all that. We do have a few questions. The first question that came in was, can you let us know if the first video you showed where the gentleman broke through the window and it was caught on film, the home security system, was that in Orange County?
It was in the city of Paramount in Los Angeles County.
Okay, thank you. And then we've had a couple requests for you to repeat the name of the book and the author about influence.
Okay, influence is Robert Cialdini. I think it's Cialdini. And the subtitle is the, I'm trying to bring it up on Amazon right now, the Theory of Persuasion or something. Just give me 2 seconds. It's on my Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, and the author is Robert, I don't have my glasses, Cialdini, Cialdini. And then the Gift of Fear was by Gavin de Becker.
Perfect, thank you. And Sabrina, just put the name and author in the chat. So if you're watching us live, you can look at the chat and you have the name of the book there. And then also, you mentioned there's statistics of 20 mass shootings per year. Is there any place that we can look to see the data by state?
I believe that information, the FBI maintains a database. So if you type in internet search to active shooter statistics and FBI, they probably dialed down there. But probably one of the good and bad of current society is the access to information, and of course, anytime one of these happens, it's enormously tragic, and we hope it never happens to us. They're still very rare, but you always hear when they happen. My older daughter went to Saugus High School, and Saugus High School she was long graduated, but they had a shooting, and they only keep stats or what they consider a mass shooting is 4 or more people. And so they said if they drop that down to even 3, then every day there'd be one in Chicago whose gun violence is out of control. So use the statistics as information, but again, that balance of being prepared and not being paranoid, I would caution against. Sometimes it's best not to know, but take it for what it's worth. They are still pretty rare, thankfully. So just pay attention to your surroundings, and I'm sure your situational awareness speaker will talk more about that.
Very good tie-in to the interview that I did with Sheriff Don Barnes on Monday. So be sure to look at our website. You can catch the replay of that. And then, of course, Jeff Lieberman doing the situational awareness this week. So those are all of the questions. So thank you, Sergeant Drucker. And thank you for all of our attendees here today. This was such an incredible presentation. I do want to give a quick reminder that we are doing a contest this week. You must attend to win. One attendee will be randomly selected to win a safety-related prize following each webinar. And if you attend all 5 webinars, you'll be entered into the grand prize drawing for a Simply Safe Security System Essentials package. That sounds cool. I don't know what it is, but that sounds amazing.
Am I eligible?
We should let you be eligible. So tune in tomorrow as we have 2 valuable sessions. At 11 a.m., Dr. Clayton Chow, the director of the Orange County Healthcare Agency, will share valuable tips and resources for mental health and an update on COVID-19. And then at 2 p.m., we'll be joined by Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer and Deputy District Attorney Kate Wagner as they provide an update and share information on real estate fraud. And they will be interviewed by Lisa Dunn, local realtor. So I hope to see you all tomorrow. And thank you again, Sergeant Drucker. We look forward to having you present for us in the future again. Thank you so much.
I'd love to.
Thanks, everyone. Be safe out there.